The sky over Caroline was never peaceful. Red dust storms often swept across the dry plains, and lightning cracked through the clouds with no warning. But tonight was different. The wind was calm, and the stars above looked almost too clear too. Quiet, Elias Voss stood outside his workshop, wiping the oil off his hands. He was a tall man, broad-shouldered, with a tired face and sharp eyes that had seen too much. Years ago, he had been a soldier. Now, he just fixed old machines and lived alone in the desert, far from the cities and their noise. Then he saw it, a streak of light across the sky, fast, burning, and heading straight for the canyon behind his home. A crash followed, loud, echoing. The ground shook slightly under his boots. Elias stared at the smoke rising in the distance. That wasn't just a rock, he muttered. He grabbed his coat, checked his side tool for emergencies, and jumped on his old hoverbike. The engine hummed as he sped across the rocky path. Following the smoke trail it didn't take long to find the crash site. A small silver pod lay half buried in the sand, its surface scorched and cracked. Strange symbols glowed faintly along the edges. This was not human technology. Elias slowed down and got off the bike. His hand hovered near his tool belt, ready for anything. He stepped closer, carefully, scanning the wreckage. Suddenly, the pod's door creaked open with a hiss of steam. Inside was something. A figure curled in the shadows. He raised his flashlight and pointed it inside. A woman. But not just any woman. Her skin was a pale silver blue, smooth like silk. Long white hair flowed down her shoulders, and her eyes, huge and glowing, softly looked directly into his. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then, her lips parted, but no words came out. Instead, Elias heard a soft voice inside his head. Please, don't leave me here. Elias stepped back, startled. Telepath, he whispered, you're Valari. She tried to move, but her body was weak. A soft gasp escaped her lips, and she collapsed against the frame of the pod. Elias stood there, unsure. He had fought in the border wars. He had seen Valari before, some peaceful, some not. But this one was clearly hurt, alone, afraid. He sighed deeply and knelt beside her. I'm not going to hurt you, he said. Can you walk? She shook her head slowly. He hesitated for a second, then lifted her gently into his arms. She was light, almost weightless. Her head rested against his chest as he carried her to the bike. You better not be dangerous, he muttered, placing her behind him and sending the autopilot to take them home. Back at his workshop, Elias laid her on the old medical bed he barely used. He connected a few monitors and adjusted the translator device on her wrist. Thankful it was still working. The woman opened her eyes again, her breathing slow but steady. Where am I? She asked, this time with actual words. You're on Caroline, Elias replied. Middle of nowhere. You crash-landed near my property. She tried to sit up, but winced in pain. Take it easy, he said, pressing a small injector to her arm. This will help with the pain. I'm not a doctor, but I've patched up worse. She looked around, confused and cautious. Her eyes settled on him. You're human. That obvious? He said with a dry smile. I thought humans did not help Valari. Most don't, he replied, turning to get her water. But I'm not most. Besides, you didn't exactly land near a city. You landed near me. She took the water slowly, her hands shaking. What's your name? Elias asked. Sci-Fi, she whispered. He nodded. Elias. There was silence between them again. Elias checked her vitals. Stable, for now. You're lucky to be alive, he said. That pod wasn't made for long jumps. I was fleeing. She replied. There was an ambush. My ship was destroyed. I used the escape pod, but it miscalculated the landing. Elias folded his arms. Someone hunting you? She nodded. The Threxians, they work for the Empire. They wiped out my people. I'm one of the last. He stared at her for a long moment. He had heard rumors. Valari colonies falling, whole planets burning. But he didn't know the stories were true. I can leave once I recover, Sci-Fi added. Quickly, I don't wish to cause trouble. Elias raised an eyebrow. You can barely stand. You're not going anywhere right now. I don't want to be a burden. You're not, yet, he said. Then paused. But don't try anything strange. She gave a faint smile. I won't. Later that night, Elias sat at his desk, watching her rest. He should have left her there. That would have been easier, safer. But something about her stayed in his mind, not just her voice, not just her strange, quiet beauty. It was the way she looked at him like someone who had lost everything and had nothing left to offer but honesty. He had seen that look before, in mirrors, in war. Maybe, just maybe, he could understand her better than he thought. Outside, the desert wind howled once more. But inside, for the first time in years, Elias Voss wasn't alone. Morning light crept over the hills of Carinine. The desert shimmered with heat, and the wind carried the scent of dry metal and sand. Inside the workshop, Elias Voss worked silently, tightening bolts on an old utility drone. His mind wasn't on the task. It hadn't been since the crash. In the next room, Scifi rested on the narrow cot he had set up for her. She was still weak, but healing. Elias had patched her wounds and kept her hydrated. Her silver-blue skin had regained some color, and her breathing was steady now. But Elias didn't trust easily. He never had. He stood up and walked into the room. Scifi's eyes opened at once. They always did, as if she never fully slept, feeling better. He asked, a little. She replied softly. Her voice was still gentle, but stronger than before. Elias handed her a small bowl of heated ration stew. It's not much, but it'll help. She took it with both hands, careful not to spill. Thank you. There was a silence between them, but not an uncomfortable one. Elias leaned against the wall, arms crossed. You said you were running from Threxians, he said. Yes, they destroyed my colony. I was one of the few who escaped. I don't even know if anyone else survived. Elias looked at the floor. I've seen what the Threxians can do. You're lucky to be alive. I don't feel lucky, Scifi whispered, her eyes lowering. I have no home, no people. I didn't even know where I was landing. I just wanted to get away. She looked up at him. But I'm grateful. I landed here. You saved me. I didn't do it for thanks, Elias said quickly, then hesitated. But I couldn't just leave you out there. Scifi nodded, understanding. Even so, I owe you? Elias shook his head. You don't owe me anything. But I do have a favor to ask. She raised her eyebrows slightly. I need help repairing the scanner tower on the ridge. I've been working on it for months. With it, we could send a signal. Maybe reach someone who can get you off this rock. Scifi sat up straighter, her interest clear. A long-range signal. Yes, military grade. But it's old, and most systems are fried. I can help with that, she said quickly. Velari tech is similar. I've trained with signal arrays before. Elias looked at her, surprised. Really? She gave a small smile. I'm not just a refugee. He gave a slow nod. All right, then. Once you're strong enough, we'll go up together. 3 days later, Scifi was walking again, slowly, but with purpose. Elias loaded supplies into a hover cart and guided her toward the scanner tower, a tall, rusted structure on a cliff above his home. The wind was strong up there, but the view stretched for miles. Red canyons, cracked stone, and a sky so wide it made a person feel small. Scifi looked at the land below and closed her eyes. It's so empty, but peaceful. Exactly why I chose it, Elias replied. They climbed into the control room of the scanner tower. The walls were covered in cables and blinking lights, half dead and flickering. Elias showed her the control panel. This is the core. It's damaged. I've replaced most of the wiring, but the system won't hold a signal longer than a few seconds. Scifi placed her hands on the console and closed her eyes. I can feel it, she whispered. It's not just damage. The alignment is off. Give me time, I think I can fix it. Elias stepped back and watched. She moved quickly, fingers gliding over the controls, her mind working faster than he expected. She wasn't just helping, she was skilled. Hours passed. The sun dropped lower in the sky. Finally, the tower gave a low hum. A blue light lit up the console. It's ready, Sci-Fi said. Smiling for the first time since she arrived, Elias blinked. You actually did it. We did it, she said gently. They both stared at the blinking signal light. For the first time, a message was reaching the stars. That night, they sat on the roof of the workshop, watching the stars. The desert wind was cool, and silence wrapped around them like a blanket. You're quiet tonight, Sci-Fi said softly. Elias took a sip from his canteen. Just thinking. About what? He looked at her, then at the stars. About how strange life is. A week ago, I was fixing broken machines and living in silence. Now I'm helping an alien rebuild a signal tower. She chuckled, the sound light and musical, and I was running for my life. Now I'm sitting on a roof with a human who doesn't hate me. Elias glanced at her. Not all humans hate aliens, but many do, she said sadly, and some of my people fear humans as well. We are different, and sometimes that makes us afraid. He nodded. Fear is powerful. I've seen it in war. But fear doesn't have to control us. Sci-Fi looked at him for a long moment. You don't speak. Like other soldiers. I stopped being a soldier a long time ago. Why? He looked away. Too much loss. Too many wrong choices. I came here to forget. She reached out, placing a gentle hand on his arm. You don't have to forget. Just start again. He didn't reply, but her words stayed with him later after she had gone to rest. Elias sat alone in the workshop, watching the signal pulse on the monitor. Someone would hear it. Someone would come. But a strange thought crept into his mind. What if she didn't want to leave? And stranger still, what if he didn't want her to go? He shook his head. No point thinking like that. And yet, the silence in the room felt a little warmer now. The scanner tower blinked silently in the night, sending out its signal again and again into the stars. Elias watched the monitor in his workshop. The signal strength was strong, stronger than ever before. Thanks to Sci-Fi's knowledge, the system could now reach nearby sectors, and someone was bound to hear it. But not all listeners were friendly. 3 days later, while Elias was working outside, he noticed something strange in the sky. A shadow, long and slow, moving above the clouds. He pulled out his scanner device and checked the readings. A ship, unmarked. It was orbiting above Kara-9. His face hardened. That's not a rescue. Inside, Sci-Fi was examining spare parts. On a table, trying to build a portable comm device, when Elias walked in. His expression told her something was wrong. What is it? She asked. There's a ship in orbit. No ID. Not Valari. Not human. She stood slowly, her body tense. They found me. Elias nodded. The Threxians, most likely, she whispered. They scanned for Valari signals. I should have known they would trace the beacon. He didn't waste time. Pack what you need. We don't run, but we prepare. For the next few hours. Elias worked with sharp focus. He activated old defense systems around his land drones, turrets. Motion traps. Most of the machines were old, half-broken, but with a little effort, they were ready. Sci-Fi helped him, linking systems with her mind to improve speed and control. She moved with purpose, calm, yet ready. As the sun set, they both stood outside, watching the sky. Why do they want you so badly? Elias asked. My people have something the Threxians fear. She said, knowledge. We once stood against their empire. Now, they want to erase us completely. Elias glanced at her. They're not erasing you. Not while I'm here. Sci-Fi looked at him, surprised but grateful. That night, the Threxians came. A small shuttle descended from the sky, landing near the ridge. Harsh light swept across the canyon, searching. Robotic soldiers stepped out, their armor dark and their weapons glowing faintly. Elias watched from his workshop window. They're coming in fast. Time to begin. He tapped a button on his remote. Several traps activated explosive charges hidden in the rocks, and mines buried in the sand. The first group of enemy units entered the canyon and vanished in smoke and sparks. Sci-Fi closed her eyes, focusing her mind. The second wave of soldiers suddenly slowed, confused, their signals twisted, their vision blurred. Her telepathy caused panic and hesitation. Elias took the chance to strike. With a modified rifle in hand, he moved through the shadows, targeting enemy machines. His shots were clean, sharp. He moved like someone trained in war, but with the quiet skill of a survivor. But there were too many of them. As the night went on, the attackers pushed closer. Elias and Sci-Fi fell back into the workshop. "We need a final defense," Elias said. "Something that can stop their core unit." Sci-Fi nodded. "There's one chance. I can overload the scanner tower. If I focus my energy into it, I can cause a shockwave. It will disable all nearby tech." Elias stared at her. "That could kill you." "Only if I lose control," she said calmly. "But I won't. I've done this once before. It worked." He clenched his jaw. "I don't like it. I don't like being hunted," she said with a small smile. "But sometimes we have to choose." Elias hesitated, then gave a slow nod. "All right, let's do it." They climbed the ridge under enemy fire. Sparks flew, and dust filled the air. The Threxians were advancing, but Elias covered her as she moved into the scanner chamber. Sci-Fi placed her hands on the core, her eyes glowing faintly. The machine lit up as she poured her power into it. Outside, Elias fought off 3 enemy units, his shoulder bleeding from a near hit. He heard the scanner hum louder. The ground shook. Then light, a bright flash exploded from the tower, sweeping across the land like a wave. Every machine in range shut down. The enemy units dropped. The lights on their ship flickered and died. Elias fell to one knee, shielding his eyes. And when the light faded, silence returned. He ran to the scanner room. Sci-Fi. She was lying on the floor, her body still. Elias rushed to her, lifting her head gently. "Come on, stay with me." Her eyes slowly opened, weak but alive. "You did it," he whispered. She gave a faint smile. "Told you I wouldn't lose control." He helped her sit up. Outside, the enemy ship was powerless. The Threxians wouldn't be a problem anymore, at least for now. That night, back at the workshop, Elias wrapped his wounds while Sci-Fi rested on the cot. He looked at her, thoughtful. "You could have run," he said. "You didn't have to fight." "I didn't want to run," she replied softly. "Not anymore." He nodded slowly. "You're not just a survivor. You're a fighter." She smiled. "So are you?" Elias sat beside her and looked out the window. Stars blinked above, quiet again. But something had changed. For the first time in years, he had fought not just for survival but for someone else, and it felt right. Smoke still rose from the canyon ridge. Broken pieces of machines and metal were scattered across the sand. The Threxians had been stopped for now. Inside the workshop, Elias wrapped fresh bandages around his shoulder. His face was tired, but his eyes remained sharp. Across the room, Sci-Fi sat near the small heater, her skin pale from the energy she had used. She was quiet, lost in thought. Elias glanced at her. "You okay?" She nodded slowly. "Just tired. Using that much energy takes a toll." "You saved both of us." Sci-Fi gave a faint smile. "I didn't want to lose what we've built here. This place, it gave me hope again." Elias looked down at his tools. "You and I, we've been running from the past, but it's catching up." Just then, the scanner beeped softly. Elias turned to check the signal. His face tensed. "Another ship just entered orbit," he said. "Bigger this time. Looks like a full Threxian war cruiser." Sci-Fi stood quickly. "They didn't give up." "No, and they know we're here. We hit them hard last time. Now they'll want to finish it." Over the next few hours, the air grew tense. Drones circled the skies. A low hum filled the land as the war cruiser slowly approached. Elias and Sci-Fi worked together, reinforcing the defenses. Old shield panels were pulled out of storage. Power cells were wired back into life. Elias used every trick he had learned during his years as a soldier. This time, they weren't facing a small team. It was a full assault. Sci-Fi helped as much as her strength allowed. She guided power flows, rebalanced energy grids, and offered quiet advice. Her mind stayed calm, focused, even though danger was near. Neither of them panicked. They had each other, and that was something. At dawn, the battle began. Flashes of light shot from the sky as dropships descended. Troops landed in waves. Their armor gleamed under the sun. Machines walked behind them, tall, heavy, and strong. Elias activated the outer traps. Explosions shook the ground as the first wave was hit. Dust flew everywhere. Drones zipped through the air, firing at the enemy from hidden towers. Sci-Fi stood at the central console, linking her mind to the defense grid. She could feel the enemies. Present, cold, and focused. They were trained, but not used to someone like her. She closed her eyes and sent a wave of confusion through their ranks. The enemies slowed, their lines broke. Elias used the chance to strike, with precise aim. He picked off the units closest to the base. His hands were steady, each shot mattered. But the enemy kept coming. Hours passed, the desert became a battlefield. Fire, smoke, and shadows filled the air. The sky darkened with ships, and the ground shook with every step of the heavy machines. Inside the workshop, alarms blared. "They're breaking through the second barrier," Elias shouted. Sci-Fi held onto the control panel, her energy almost gone. "I can stall them again, but I don't know for how long." "You've done enough," Elias said. "I need you to rest now." "But no." His voice was firm, but gentle. "I'll handle it from here." Sci-Fi looked at him, worried. "What are you planning?" He gave a small smile. "A surprise. Something I saved for a day like this." Elias ran to the underground storage room. There, covered in tarps and dust, was an old battlesuit, large, armored, and dangerous. It had belonged to him during the war. He had sworn never to use it again. But now, he had a reason. He climbed in, powered it up, and stepped outside. The suit moved with power. Each step sent tremors through the sand. The enemy turned to face him, but they weren't ready. Elias charged forward, breaking their lines, shielding the workshop from harm. His suit's weapons flashed, fire and smoke lit the air. Behind him, Sci-Fi watched through the monitors. Her heart pounded. He was risking everything, for her, for this place, and she couldn't let him face it alone. Drawing from her last bit of strength, Sci-Fi stepped outside and lifted her hands. Energy flowed around her fingers. She focused not on harming but on helping Dot. She boosted Elias's systems, sent warnings into his mind, guided him through the fight like a second pair of eyes. Together, they pushed the enemy back. The Threxians, though strong, weren't prepared for this. A human in full combat gear, supported by a Velari with psychic power, was not something they expected. One by one, their machines fell. The troops began to retreat. At last, the war cruiser above broke orbit and flew away. Its mission failed. Silence returned. The land was broken, blackened from battle. Smoke rose in the distance, but no enemy remained. Elias stepped out of the suit, breathing hard. His armor was cracked, but he was still standing. Sci-Fi met him halfway, her face filled with both worry and relief. "You're alive," she said. "So? Are you?" he replied. They sat down together near the canyon edge, both too tired to move further. "We protected it," Sci-Fi whispered. "Our home." Elias looked at her. "You really think of it that way?" "Yes," she said. "Not just this land, but here, with you." He looked into her eyes. "Then stay," she smiled. "I was hoping you'd say that." And for the first time, they both knew they weren't just surviving anymore. They were living together. Days passed after the battle. The smoke had cleared. The machines had cooled. The land was quiet again, but not empty. The base that once belonged only to Elias now felt different, full of quiet warmth and shared purpose. Elias walked along the canyon edge, repairing broken systems. The shield towers had taken heavy damage, and many of the drones were beyond saving. Still, he worked with steady hands and focused eyes. Inside the workshop, Sci-Fi rested, regaining her strength. Her powers had been pushed to the limit, and though she had survived, her body still needed time to heal. But she never complained. Instead, she smiled more. She asked questions about Elias's past. She helped rebuild small devices, even when her hands were tired. She had found a rhythm in this place, a calm. One afternoon, while they worked side by side fixing a sensor dish, the scanner beeped. Elias frowned. Another signal. Sci-Fi moved closer. Her eyes widened as she read the data. It's a Villari ship, she said softly. One of the few left. They heard the beacon. Elias leaned back, silent. Sci-Fi stared at the signal, her expression unreadable. They're coming, he asked. She nodded. Yes? They'll be here in less than 2 days. That evening, they sat outside under the open sky. Stars shimmered above, and the wind moved gently through the canyons. A small fire flickered between them. Elias stared into the flames. So, what happens now? Sci-Fi didn't answer right away. I'm not sure, she said. The Villari have been scattered, but this ship, it's part of a rescue fleet. They're gathering survivors, rebuilding. He nodded slowly. Sounds like something you should be part of. She looked at him. Do you want me to go? The question hit him harder than expected. I want you to be safe, he said. If that ship takes you somewhere better, I won't stop you. Sci-Fi studied his face. But that's not what I asked. Elias turned to her. I don't want you to go. But I also don't want to be the reason you don't, she smiled. Faintly, you've always given me a choice from the first day. That's how it should be. When the Villari ship arrived the next day, it did not land with noise or force. It hovered gently over the ridge, light glowing from beneath, and sent a shuttle down to the surface. Two figures stepped out tall, graceful, and clearly of Sci-Fi's kind. Their eyes held wisdom, and their clothes shimmered with soft energy. One of them bowed slightly. Sci-Fi of Velar, we have come for you. Sci-Fi stood tall, even though her heart beat fast. The second Villari spoke. We have found a place for our people to begin again. You are welcome to join us. You are needed. Sci-Fi looked at Elias, then back at her own people. I am grateful, she said, but I have found something here I never had before. The Villari looked confused. You would stay with a human. I would stay with this human, she said clearly. He gave me shelter when I had none. He listened when others would not, and when danger came, he stood by me. The two Villari glanced at Elias. He remained still, watching silently. One of them nodded. It is your choice. Sci-Fi looked to Elias again. Do you still want me here? Elias stepped forward. This place is no longer just mine. It's ours. If you want to stay, stay. Her eyes softened. Then I will. The Villari bowed in respect. You are welcome to change your mind at any time. We will always be listening. I understand, Sci-Fi said. And just like that, the shuttle lifted, and the ship above faded into the sky. Later that night, the stars felt brighter. Sci-Fi sat beside Elias on the canyon ledge. The wind was quiet, and the air was cool. Are you sure? Elias asked. That was your people. That was your history. I'm sure, she replied. I may have been born among the stars, but I found my future here. He nodded. This place, it's not much. It's everything, she said softly, because you're here. He looked at her for a long time. For once, he didn't try to hide what he felt. I was broken before you crashed here, Elias said. Now, I feel whole again. And I was lost, Sci-Fi replied. Now I feel found. They sat in silence, side by side, watching the sky stretch endlessly. Above them, the next day, they returned to work. The base needed repairs. New life could come to Caranine now. Refugees, travelers, those looking for peace. Sci-Fi and Elias planned to welcome them all, together. They began rebuilding not just walls and systems, but something far more rare, a place where the very different souls could share the same sky and the same future. The sun rose over Caranine, painting the rocky desert in warm gold. The land was quiet, but not lifeless. Wind moved softly through the canyons, carrying the scent of metal, stone, and something new. Hope. Elias stood on a hill just outside the base. Beside him, a new tower was being built, taller, stronger, brighter than the last one. A beacon, not for war this time, but for peace. Sci-Fi walked up the hill, her long hair flowing in the wind. Her skin had regained its glow, and her eyes were calm. She stood beside Elias, silent for a moment. They'll come, she said. He nodded. I know. 2 weeks had passed since the Villari ship left. In that short time, news of what happened on Caranine had spread, somehow. Someone had shared the signal, perhaps the Villari ship, perhaps a listening satellite, but the story traveled faster than expected. A human had protected a Villari. A Villari had stayed with a human together. They had stopped the Threxian squad, and they had survived. Now, small ships began to arrive. A pair of traders came first, asking if the outpost could offer supplies. Then, a wounded medic from a forgotten war zone. Then a Villari child with no parents, holding a note written in an old dialect that said, "Please keep her safe, Elias." And Sci-Fi welcomed them all. The base changed quickly. Old walls were rebuilt. New energy panels were added. The broken drones were turned into service bots. And with Sci-Fi's help, communication lines opened to nearby colonies. Elias, once quiet and closed, began to speak more. He taught others how to fix machines, build homes, and survive in the desert. Sci-Fi worked with the children, teaching them about stars, languages, and how to listen with the heart as well as the ears. People began calling the place the Light Post, a place for all human, alien, lost, or lonely. One evening, as stars filled the sky, Sci-Fi and Elias sat on the roof of the old workshop. It had become their favorite place. Below, the base glowed with warm lights. Laughter and voices could be heard. Life had returned to this once forgotten place. "It's beautiful," Sci-Fi said, watching the lights below. "You made it beautiful." Elias replied, "We made it." She corrected him with a smile. He looked at her, then back at the stars. "I never imagined this. I thought I'd live out the rest of my life alone, fixing scrap, hiding from the past. But the future found you," Sci-Fi said. He chuckled softly. "No, you found me." They sat quietly for a moment. Then Elias turned serious. "Do you ever miss it?" he asked. "Your people, your world?" Sci-Fi nodded. "Yes, sometimes, but I don't regret staying. Even now, especially now," she said, "because now I have something I never thought I'd find again. Purpose." A few days later, a message came through the scanner. It was a request. A council from a nearby colony wanted to visit. They had heard about the Light Post and the human who protected a Villari. They wanted to meet the ones building peace. Elias read the message twice. "They're coming," he told Sci-Fi. "Leaders from both sides." She nodded. "Then we welcome them." When the council ship landed, it brought humans, Villari, and others, different races, different stories, but all with questions. "Why did you help her?" One asked Elias. "Because she needed help," he answered simply, "and because it was right." Another asked Sci-Fi, "Why didn't you leave with your people?" "Because I found something here worth staying for," she said. They gave no speeches, no long talks, only truth, spoken with quiet strength. The visitors stayed for a while, learning from the outpost. When they left, they promised to tell others not just about the place, but about what was possible. Not all humans feared aliens. Not all aliens distrusted humans. Some had chosen to walk forward together. That night, a celebration was held. The people danced under the stars. Music echoed across the rocks, children laughed, and even the machines joined in, flashing lights and spinning in the air. Elias stood near the fire, watching the joy around him. Sci-Fi walked up beside him. "You look like you're thinking again," she teased. "I'm always thinking. About what this time?" He looked at her. "About how one crash changed everything." She smiled. "It wasn't just the crash. It was the person who opened the door, and the one who didn't give up." He reached for her hand. She didn't pull away. They stood together, watching the fire, surrounded by light, by people, by peace. Karanan was still a desert. The wind still howled, and the rocks still burned under the sun. But now, something new had bloomed in that dry land, a place where broken hearts were mended, a place where hope had a home, a place where one human and one alien proved that no matter how far apart worlds might be, kindness could always build a bridge.